Hi, I'm Patrick Sullivan. This is Recurring Insight, and for this episode, I'm going to be talking about fact or fiction. I think fact or fiction is a really interesting design because it stands out among all designs, not just competitive designs, for having a number of unique characteristics at a power level that you don't really see very frequently. Having that much public information, having someone having to play sort of a guessing game around the nature of someone's hand, and the fact because it's a card drawing spell, when it gets cast once, it often gets cast over and over again in the same game, makes fact or fiction, I think, one of Magic's most unique designs.
Fact or fiction is a very significant design in Magic's history, and if you've been playing the game for less than 20 years, you might not think of it as such, as it's a fringe player in constructed formats at best, but that's not the entire story of why it's so iconic. It is a distinct card, and there is a really fun game that goes on there. There's cards up on the table, and then there's decision making on both sides with interesting elements of bluffing and cat and mouse games. So it's not surprising, setting aside the power level, that the card really stands out in Magic's history. There are some problems with it, setting aside the rate. The big one for me is the burden shifting. It's a really complicated card, and it's fine for some cards to be complicated, but I think cards that are complicated should foist the complexity burden on the person who decides to play with it. And the reason that fact or fiction has such a burden shifting issue is because the person who is splitting the piles has to look at the cards that they're deciding how to split against the unknown information of the cards that are in your hand. And it would be complicated without that unknown information, but it becomes extremely complicated once you factor that in. And the person casting their fact or fiction just gets to take the best pile with all the information in play. Compare that to Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths. This card is analogous to fact or fiction in a lot of ways. It's obviously inspired by it, but I think the play is so much better because the person casting it is the person who ultimately has to make the decision with ambiguity. There's a face down pile that your opponent put face down. There's the known information of the cards that you could take with the cards in your hand. And ultimately, you have to kind of shrug your shoulders and make your best guess based on the combination of known and unknown information. The fact that it shifts the burden of complexity onto the person casting the card, I think makes it a substantially better design than fact or fiction. The last criticism that I have about fact or fiction is Magic's already a very complicated game. The best players win all the time, or win very frequently at least. And that suggests that the game is very skill intensive, that even if you're not aware of it, you're making mistakes all the time. But there is a fun game there. The design is incredibly sweet and iconic, and it's inspired a lot of adjacent designs. But I think executions like Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths, which shift the complexity, ambiguity, burden onto the person casting it, are just a better execution of this sort of thing than fact or fiction.
So that was fact or fiction, and this is Recurring Insight. A few things to do from here. Make sure you're subscribing to the Sarcity Games YouTube page so you can get notified when new videos get uploaded. Throw a like or a comment up there. I'm getting pretty close to being done with kind of the second wave of designs here, so I'll be kind of combing through the comments, ignoring and downvoting the stray negative comments and things about my appearance or my recording equipment quality or lack thereof, and trying to pull out a couple of nuggets in a just sea of trash to inform the next wave of videos, which hopefully you'll enjoy about as much as this one.